Good day and welcome to another edition of Citizens Movement Radio News. Today is Tuesday, 22 July 2025. I'm Bernard Chele, ready to bring you the latest news and updates. Here are today's headlines on Citizens Movement Radio News. Wetlands are our heritage. President Chamisa calls for protection of wetlands. MP slams land and water pollution in Urungwe. None in ZanuPF can win free and fair elections against Advocate Chamisa, says opposition. Now let's delve into the detailed stories. Citizens President Advocate Nelson Chamisa has called for protection of wetlands and environment, posting on his social platforms ahead of Ramsar COP15 to be hosted in Victoria Falls tomorrow. President Chamisa said Zimbabwe is a unique opportunity to present Africa-led solutions to wetland and environmental degradation. He bemoaned the current state of wetlands across the country, saying urgent action needs to be taken to stop their destruction. He also spoke about the mountains that are being dug by the Chinese and destroyed without mercy. ZanuPF-linked land barons are notorious for grabbing and building on wetlands in Harare and Chitungwiza. National and West Women Proportional Representation Member of Parliament Honorable Mutsamrombedzi has raised alarm over land and water pollution by a cement plant in Magunje, Urungwe. Honorable Mrombedzi told Citizens Movement Radio that the company is bulldozing graves and contaminating Magunje Dam through its effluents. ZanuPF yesterday held a press conference at the party's headquarters announcing its decision to turn down proposals to co-opt Emerson Mnangagwa's ally Kudakwashi Tagwirei into the Central Committee. Addressing the media, Mtsvangwa said Tagwirei as a presidential candidate will make the party lose elections. Let's hear part of the presser.
Well, the constitution is very clear as to how you can become a Central Committee member. And Harare province may have had aspirations for him to be a Central Committee member. But the party has its leadership, and the Central Committee is the most important decision-making institution of the party before the Congress, which is in 2027. So the Central Committee was sitting, and the tick box was looked at as to the eligibility of that person to be in the meeting. And the recommendations of Harare were assessed as to whether they satisfy that eligibility. Sadly, for Harare province, it wasn't the case, so he wasn't successful. Their bid to support him wasn't successful. But that is it may. ZanuPF is a part of everybody, including business people. You can always go back and start again and go through the processes. And if you finally meet the tick box, you may find yourself again as a Central Committee. But for the time being, you may not be satisfying with those conditions. It's not tender tiri mauri. Takaenda tiri 19 years. We are still there. We may also have aspired to become very high along the way. But 40 years later, we're still there. You see, because the party has a way of doing certain things. So the members of the party, who knows? Next time you may be successful. Does that answer you?
Meanwhile, opposition official Stephen Sarkozy Chuma, however, said no one in ZanuPF has the capacity to win free and fair elections against Advocate Nelson Chamisa, Chuma said.
Yes, yesterday we heard ZanuPF spokesperson Christopher Mchangwa in a press conference saying Emerson Mnangagwa's preferred candidate, Kudakwashi Tagwirei, will lose elections as a ZanuPF presidential candidate. While it is true, it is also not mendacious that Advocate Nelson Chamisa has been winning elections since 2018. And in 2023 general elections, even SADC confirmed that the elections were rigged. We know that in a free and fair elections, ZanuPF cannot win against the opposition. We know that in a free and fair election, Mnangagwa, Constantino Chiwenga, Chris Mchangwa, Kudata Gurei, and everyone in the leadership of ZanuPF whom they feud, cannot win against Advocate Nelson Chamisa. So what we urge the people of Zimbabwe is that they must continue supporting Advocate Nelson Chamisa. And the call now is for the people of Zimbabwe to demand electoral reforms so that we have a free and fair election. We know that ZanuPF, in its various formations, including its puppets like Senges Chalang, cannot defeat genuine opposition as fronted by Advocate Nelson Chamisa.
With just over 2 years before the country plunges into another general election, the opposition has been urged to push for electoral reforms. Political analyst Simbam Kori said going into the 2028 polls without electoral reforms would be suicidal for the opposition. He said the 2023 SADC Election Observer Mission report clearly lays bare challenges that the opposition will face again in another election if they do not fight for reforms. Mukori said.
Well, it is indeed a great honor and a privilege to have this opportunity once again to submit my perspective on the issue of electoral reforms in Zimbabwe. It is a matter that has been debated, a matter that has been discussed for quite a while now in the country, almost for decades, and it continues to come up. And I think we must now come together and reason together and give some words of wisdom and warnings to the opposition in Zimbabwe that this is a matter that they must attend to even before the 2028 elections. We have noticed that the elections in Zimbabwe have always been disputed, and the only way that we can maybe try to avert these disputes with regards to elections in the country is by attending to the electoral reforms that must be effected before the elections. And allow me to refer to the 2023 SADC Election Observer Mission on Zimbabwe, which made several key recommendations for electoral reforms to enhance transparency, to enhance issues of fairness and credibility in future elections. And as opposition in Zimbabwe, these recommendations must be acknowledged for progress. And there are key things that I must outline that they did made recommendations on. They made recommendations on issues to do with the alignment of electoral laws with the 2013 constitution to ensure consistency, where they also noted that there is need for the strengthening of the independence of the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. The main issues to do with improving transparency in the voters registration process to ensure access to an auditable and verifiable voters roll was also very key. We also noted that in the last election in 2023, a number of people were disenfranchised and could not be able to vote as a result of the irregularities around the voters roll and the voter registration processes. The matters that are also very critical that were raised issues to do with the media and freedom of expression, where it was noted that there was no balanced media coverage for all political parties, including the state-owned media, which was more in favor of the ruling party. And it was critical, and it is still critical, that a fairer and more freer environment for political campaigning must be created. And this can only be done through making sure that the opposition fights, or even the ruling party itself, ensures that there is electoral reform in the country. There are many issues that we attend to, comrades. Issues to do with political violence and intimidation, issues to do with election observation and transparency, issues to do with the even inclusivity and the participation of the youth of marginalized groups in the electoral processes are all very key. And most importantly, the timely announcement of results to improve efficiency and transparency in the results management system to prevent delays and disputes. These are matters that needs to be attended to, matters that if the opposition in the country is not going to attend to these issues, to mobilize and to organize the people in order to fight for these electoral reforms, it is going to be very suicidal for any opposition leader to mobilize and invite the masses of our people to come and vote again. We can only be able to vote against the tyranny that is in the country, against the kleptocracy and the dictatorship that is in the country, if there is electoral reform. And this is my encouragement, this is my advice to the progressive opposition, the democratic alternative in the country, to ensure that electoral reform is effected, electoral reform is brought into the country. Let's fight for this in order to create a fair, credible electoral landscape that we can all be free to say, let's go and vote and ensure that the results are there and the elections are free and fair in the country. Thank you.
17 people have died following a devastating collision between a 30-ton haulage truck and a commuter omnibus along Seke Road at Unyani Bridge near Waterworks this morning. Although authorities are yet to confirm what happened, eyewitnesses say the crash was triggered by a Honda Fit that veered into the path of the haulage truck, forcing the driver to swerve into the opposite lane. In doing so, the truck collided head-on with the oncoming combi, dragging and crushing it beneath its heavy frame. The Financial Intelligence Unit, FIU, has revealed that the country has lost money in excess of US $6.5 billion in the last 5 years. The national agency responsible for countering financial crimes pointed out car dealerships, gold smuggling, and corruption activities as enablers of financial illicit flows. Speaking to Citizens Movement Radio, opposition MP for Mbizo, Honorable Koban Mazwanyika, said there's lack of will by the ZanuPF government to fight money laundering. He said despite evidence by Al Jazeera's Gold Mafia documentary, not a single person has been arrested from those involved. Let's hear Honorable Mazwanyika speaking.
I wish to condemn in the strongest terms the revelations that Zimbabwe has lost an estimated $6.5 billion US for the past 5 years due to illicit financial flows, according to the Financial Intelligence Unit of the RBC. The figure, which is equivalent to 1 year national budget, is a national scandal and a profound indictment on the government's failure to safeguard public resources. These illicit flows, these illicit outflows of funds, normally facilitated through smuggling, through illegal mining, through tax evasion, through transfer pricing, through offshore transfers, and abuse of power, they represent not only a massive economic loss, but a moral and development betrayal. In a country where citizens struggle daily with the crumbling hospitals, collapsed infrastructure, whether road, rail, or air, in a country which is facing a poor education system and an education crisis, where, for example, beam facilities are, government owes around 193 million in beam facilities since 2020. When you see this kind of siphoning of billions into the private pockets, it's actually an act of economic sabotage, and it cannot be underestimated or tolerated. This is not just a policy failure, it is a grand theft against the people of Zimbabwe. Every dollar stolen is a stolen future. So we cannot bury our heads in the sand and appear as if everything is normal, yet we see such kind of grand theft of our national resources. I therefore call upon the government to ensure that there is immediate investigation and the publication of all people who are involved in the illicit financial flows since 2020. We also call upon the prosecution of all individuals, both in the government and the private sector, who are implicated in these illegal financial dealings. We also call upon government to reinforce all institutions that are tasked with anti-corruption, such as the ZAC and tax authorities, to ensure that all those who are involved in this kind of scourge are brought to justice. So you will find that I categorically urge Parliament to actually also convene this emergency session to debate this issue as a matter of urgency, to ensure that a commission of inquiry into the illicit financial flows is established for the purpose of ensuring that all those criminal syndicates are brought to book. So you realize that the loss of the 6.5 billion US dollars is not just a statistic, but it is the reason why our clinics have not made it. It is the reason why our roads remains impassable. It is the reason why our young people flee to other countries in search of hope. So in that regard, I call upon all progressive forces to join hands and push forward to ensure that all these economic saboteurs are brought to book and brought to book urgently. Thank you.
ZanuPF thugs in Bari are reportedly terrorizing and extorting farmers who sell their produce at the high-density suburbs vegetable market. The farmers say despite reports the police are yet to act on the issue. Opposition Councillor for Ward 16 in Harare, Councillor Denford Gadzore, told Citizens Movement Radio that the council will not tolerate such kind of behavior in council-run markets and advised the farmers to report to council's SMEC's division at Remembrance Drive. Let's hear Councillor Ngadzore speaking.
We will not tolerate this kind of behavior in our council-run markets. Any form of victimization or exploitation of farmers is completely unacceptable. The affected farmer is strongly encouraged to formally report the matter to the Mbare Remembrance SMS divisions for redress and necessary support. We have also received disturbing reports from Coca-Cola market where certain individuals are allegedly pocketing thousands of US dollars daily from potato farmers selling directly from their trucks. The Harare Municipal Police, together with the SMS divisions, is currently handling the matter, and we ensure that appropriate action is taken. Council green markets must save and protect the interests of home traders and hardworking farmers, not the criminal syndicates.
A notorious ZanuPF thug Esau Mtano, who disrupted opposition politician Job Scala's book launch in Masvingo last week, has no track record of violence. Opposition official Jefferson Chitando told Citizens Movement Radio that Mutano, who is Ezra Chadzamira's driver, was also behind the disruption of PVOB hearing in Masvingo last year to rob residents an opportunity of giving their input into the bill before it became a law. He also raised alarm over the police's unwillingness to arrest this criminal. Chitando said.
Esau Mutano is a well-known, notorious ZANU-PF thug who has caused a lot of violence and disruption of events and caused damage to various property for political violence. One, he destroyed thousands worth of books during Job Scala's book launch in Masvingo. Police in plain clothes were there. Esau Mutano is known to have caused the disruption of parliamentary committee public hearing on the POV bill, which means the people of Masvingo did not contribute anything to the bill because of one notorious thug, a violent merchant. 3, Esau Mutano is also figured for orchestrating the violence which stoned President Nelson Chamisa's convoy when he was going to Charumbira. Most of the people still remember that well-published incident. In all these incidents, the police have not arrested, have not brought Esau Mutano to court or for questioning. This is surprising many Zimbabweans and people in Masvingo, they now think that Esau Mutano is untouchable. Esau Mutano is above the law. Esau Mutano, by being ZanuPF, has the right to do whatever he wants. But some people are now concluding that there should be someone behind Esau Mutano's political violence. Because Esau Mutano is an illegal money changer at OK Masvingo, Esau Mutano is a driver for Masvingo West ZanuPF vehicle. Masvingo West is the constituents of Masvingo resident minister, Honorable Ezra Chadzamira.
It is 5 years since opposition politician Jacob Ngarivume, journalist Hopo Chimono, and others were arrested for exposing corruption and calling for demonstrations against then Minister of Health Obadiah Moyo, who stole more than $50 million COVID-19 funds. Moyo is still roaming free as his case died a natural death, with the state preferring not to prosecute him. Emmerson Mnangagwa has been preaching about zero tolerance to corruption, but he harbors his relatives and criminals involved in corruption scandals. Sabuku and former Norton MP Themba Mliswa has welcomed the axing of Kwazana MP Charlton Wende as chairperson of the Public Accounts Portfolio Committee. Mliswa dismissed Wende as the worst chairperson to grace the powerful portfolio. Mliswa accused Wende of using his position to milk money from those he was meant to scrutinize. Last week, Wende received a serious backlash from citizens after applauding Emmerson Mnangagwa for intruding parliamentary business. Now let's take a look at our sports news. Warrior striker Tinotenda Kadewere has sealed his move from French League One side Nantes to Aris Thessaloniki in Greece on a free transfer. Kadewere signed a 2-year deal with the Greek side. He was presented as Aris Thessaloniki player yesterday. To conclude our Citizens Movement radio news, here are the headlines once more. Wetlands are our heritage. President Chamisa calls for protection of wetlands. MP slams land and water pollution in Urungwe. None in ZanuPF can win free and fair elections against Advocate Chamisa, says opposition. The news on CMR English was brought to you by Bernard Stele. Me and the whole team wishes you all a good night. Meet me again in other news bulletin.